The schedule is finally out. The matchups are loaded. And this season feels like one of those years where every single week is going to be a war. There are some games on this schedule that could completely change the direction of the season. And honestly, there's a stretch in the second half that's going to tell us exactly what this team is made of. Steelers Nation is about to go through a roller coaster this year. If you're fired up for the season, smash that like button right now and drop "Here we go" down in the comments so we know who's riding with the black and gold this year. The Pittsburgh Steelers now know exactly what stands between them and a potential playoff run in 2026. And after looking at the full schedule, one thing becomes crystal clear. This season is going to test every part of this roster. From the opening kickoff against the Atlanta Falcons all the way to another massive showdown with the Baltimore Ravens in Week 18, the NFL did not make life easy for Mike Tomlin and company. The season begins at Acrisure Stadium against the Atlanta Falcons, and there is already a lot of intrigue surrounding that matchup. Pittsburgh has historically handled Atlanta well at home, and Steelers fans still remember how dominant the team looked the last time they opened against the Falcons a couple years ago. This time, though, there's extra attention because of Tua Tagovailoa potentially making his debut for Atlanta. That immediately raises the stakes for Week 1. The Steelers cannot afford another sluggish home opener like the one against San Francisco a few seasons back. And you know the energy inside Acrisure is going to be intense from the first snap. Then comes one of the first major measuring stick games of the year, in Week 2 against the New England Patriots in Foxborough. That is not an easy road environment, especially against the defending AFC champions. The possible quarterback matchup between Aaron Rodgers and Drake May adds even more drama to the game. Pittsburgh will find out very quickly whether this roster is truly ready to compete with the elite teams in the conference. It's one thing to beat up on weaker opponents, but going into Foxborough in September and stealing a win would immediately send a message across the league that the Steelers are serious contenders. Week 3 might quietly be one of the most important games of the first half of the season because the Cincinnati Bengals come to town early. Steelers fans know the Bengals have struggled badly during September under Zach Taylor, and Pittsburgh has to capitalize on that trend. Divisional games early in the year can completely change the direction of a season. If the Steelers can grab an early win over Cincinnati, it gives them leverage later in the AFC North race and immediately puts pressure on Joe Burrow and that Bengals offense. The problem is what happens immediately after that. The Steelers head to Cleveland on a short week for Thursday Night Football, and no matter how good Pittsburgh looks on paper, road games in Cleveland always become ugly battles. The Browns continue to be unpredictable because of the quarterback situation involving Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders, but AFC North football never follows expectations anyway. Short-week divisional games are brutal physically, and this matchup could become one of those low-scoring, exhausting games decided by a turnover late in the fourth quarter. The middle part of the schedule is where things become fascinating because there are several very winnable games before the true gauntlet begins. The Steelers return home against the Indianapolis Colts in Week 5 after already beating them at Acrisure last season. Then comes a road trip to Tampa Bay, where Pittsburgh reunites with former special teams coordinator Danny Smith, now with the Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield versus the Steelers defense is the kind of matchup that could turn chaotic quickly, depending on how healthy the secondary is by that point in the year. But the game that everyone is going to be talking about nationally is the international matchup in Paris against the New Orleans Saints. That changes everything. Overseas games are always difficult because teams have to deal with travel, fatigue, time adjustments, and preparation disruptions. The Steelers then immediately return home to face Cleveland again right after the Paris trip, which honestly feels like one of the toughest scheduling spots the NFL could have created for them. There's no recovery week after traveling internationally. Instead, Pittsburgh gets thrown directly back into AFC North football. That stretch could define whether the Steelers enter the bye week with momentum or completely drained physically. The bye finally arrives in Week 9, but many around the organization probably would have preferred getting that break immediately after Paris instead of waiting another week. The timing matters because after the bye, the schedule becomes absolutely brutal. This is where the season could either become special or completely collapse. It starts with a Sunday night football matchup against Cincinnati on the road. Primetime AFC North football is always emotional, physical, and unpredictable. Then Pittsburgh travels to Philadelphia to face one of the most physical teams in the NFL. Going into Philadelphia late in the season is a nightmare for almost every team because the Eagles dominate the trenches and their home crowd becomes a major factor in cold weather games. And somehow it gets even harder after that. The Steelers then play the Denver Broncos on Black Friday in another high-profile game before returning home for a Sunday night matchup against the Houston Texans. That Texans game has already been circled by many Steelers fans because of what happened the last time these teams met. Houston exposed Pittsburgh badly in that playoff matchup, and now the Steelers have a chance to prove they've closed the gap. The organization clearly believes the roster is stronger now, especially offensively, and that game could become one of the defining moments of the entire season. What makes this stretch terrifying is that it still doesn't end there. After Houston, the Steelers head to Jacksonville for another primetime battle against a playoff-caliber Jaguars team before traveling to Baltimore in Week 15. That 6-week run might honestly be one of the toughest stretches any team faces in 2026. Cincinnati twice, Philadelphia, Denver, Houston, Jacksonville, and Baltimore all packed into a short period is absolutely relentless. The encouraging part for Pittsburgh is that the early schedule is manageable enough to build momentum before entering that storm. Looking at the first 8 games, there's a realistic path to a 6-2 start if the Steelers take care of business. Atlanta, Indianapolis, Cleveland, New Orleans, and Tennessee are all games where Pittsburgh will expect to compete heavily or win outright. If the Steelers stumble early, though, that brutal second-half stretch could become overwhelming fast. Late in the year, the schedule softens slightly with Carolina and Tennessee, before the now traditional season finale against Baltimore at Acrisure Stadium. And honestly, the NFL clearly loves ending Steelers seasons with Ravens drama, because it has become television gold. Last year's finale delivered huge ratings and massive playoff implications, and the league appears fully committed to keeping this rivalry in that spotlight. There's a very real possibility the AFC North title could once again come down to Steelers versus Ravens in Week 18 under the lights in Pittsburgh. What makes this schedule so interesting is that it feels perfectly balanced between opportunity and danger. The first half gives Pittsburgh a chance to stack wins and build confidence, but the second half will reveal whether this team is truly built for January football. There are no shortcuts once the gauntlet begins. Either the Steelers prove they belong among the AFC elite, or they get exposed by one playoff-caliber opponent after another. And maybe the biggest question of all is whether this roster is finally ready to take the next step after years of hovering around contention without fully breaking through. The talent appears stronger. The expectations are higher. The schedule is demanding. Everything is lined up for a season that could become one of the defining years of the Mike Tomlin era. So now that the full 2026 schedule is official, which game are you circling first? And do you believe this Steelers team is actually built to survive that brutal second-half gauntlet? Make sure you subscribe to the channel right now, turn on notifications so you never miss any breaking Steelers news, and smash that like button if you believe this team can make a serious playoff run in 2026. And when this video ends, click the next video that's already on your screen because the latest Steelers updates, rumors, and analysis are happening right here before anywhere else in Steelers Nation.